Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into what's being called the nurses' war, a deep, systemic crisis hitting NHS nurses in England. And look, this isn't just about being overworked. It's about a workforce that feels totally trapped and betrayed by the very system they're fighting to hold together.
You know, when you think about the NHS crisis, you probably picture long waiting lists, right? But the real symbol, the thing that shows just how bad things have gotten, is this: corridor care. And according to safety investigators, by early 2025, this was officially recognized as just standard practice. Think about that. Treating people in a hallway isn't an emergency fix anymore. It's the new and, frankly, very dangerous normal.
Okay, look at this number, 104,079. So what is that? It's not a budget line, it's the number of times an NHS staff member was physically assaulted in just 1 year. And get this, that number has more than doubled in only 5 years. Hospitals, places that are supposed to be for healing, are becoming hostile environments. So let's get past the statistics for a second. What does all of this actually feel like for nurses on the ground, day in and day out? I mean, just look at this chart. The speed of this change is just staggering. Back in 2019, we're talking about 50,000 assaults. Fast forward just 5 years, and boom, it explodes to over 104,000. This isn't some slow creep upwards. It's an absolute failure to keep staff safe. It's an epidemic of violence against the people we rely on to care for us. And this quote, man, it just hits you. A senior A&E nurse called her department a tinderbox, just waiting to go off. And the stats back it up. The Royal College of Nursing found that in an English emergency department, a staff member gets attacked every single hour. Can you even imagine trying to work like that, constantly on edge, just trying to do your job? And all that violence, that hostility, it has a huge impact. It's not just physical. By 2024, the number one reason nurses were calling in sick wasn't the flu, it wasn't a bad back. Nope. It was anxiety, stress, and depression, making up over a quarter of all sick days. This isn't just about bruises. The workforce is being psychologically shattered. So you might hear the word burnout thrown around a lot. But what we're talking about here is something much deeper, something way more damaging. The source material calls it moral injury. So what is moral injury? Well, here's the clinical definition. But basically, it's what happens when your job forces you over and over again to do things that go against your own moral code. It's the trauma of knowing exactly what a patient needs, what the right thing to do is, and the system just won't let you do it. And this quote right here just nails it. It's not about working hard. It's about working wrongly. Nurses train for years to give safe, compassionate care. But when the system makes them treat an elderly patient in a drafty corridor or juggle way too many sick people at once, they're being forced to work wrongly. This goes way beyond being tired. It's like a part of their professional soul is being chipped away, day after day. So, the big question is, how did we get here? How did this system get so broken that it actually hurts the people who work in it? Well, the sources say it wasn't an accident. It was built piece by piece through some key political decisions, creating what's being called an architecture of betrayal. And this timeline really pinpoints the moment things changed. See, before 2012, the law was pretty clear. The Secretary of State for Health had a legal duty to make sure healthcare was provided. The buck stopped with them. But then the 2012 Health and Social Care Act came along, and it got rid of that fundamental duty. And that one change just shattered the whole chain of command. And what that created was something the sources call an accountability void. Suddenly, responsibility was split up between all these different bodies. So, when you have a huge problem like corridor care, who's actually responsible for fixing it? Well, the answer is nobody. There's no single person or group you can point to. The problem just gets lost in this void.
And this is where it gets really telling. You see just how big this problem is in England when you look across the border to the rest of the UK.
Just look at this table. It's black and white. In Scotland and Wales, there are laws that say you have to have safe staffing levels. It's a legal minimum, a hard floor for safety. But in England, it's just a guideline, a suggestion. So what happens when budgets get tight? Well, you guessed it. Staffing levels get cut, safety is compromised, and there's nothing legally anyone can do about it. The Royal College of Nursing pulls no punches here. They argue this basically makes nurses in England second-class citizens inside their own profession. They don't have the same legal backup as their colleagues in Scotland and Wales, and the sources are clear. This isn't an oversight.
It's a deliberate political choice.
Okay, so let's put it all together. You've got the daily violence, the deep psychological harm, and then you've got these massive failings in the law. What do you get? Well, the conclusion is pretty hard to avoid. It's a systemic betrayal of nurses.
And all of this feeds into a horrible, vicious cycle that nurses are trapped in, right? They're forced to provide care that they know is unsafe, which causes that moral injury. Then those awful conditions make patients and families frustrated and angry, which leads to more violence. And that stress and violence makes nurses sick. And underpinning this whole broken mess is a legal system that offers them zero protection on staffing. It just goes round and round.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this idea. Nurses have basically become the human shock absorbers for the entire broken system. Their suffering, both physical and mental, is what's soaking up the damage from all the bad decisions, the lack of funding, and those legal gaps we talked about. Which brings us to one last really big question. We hear all the time that the plan is to just train more nurses, but the source material describes this as pouring water into a leaky bucket. And you have to ask, if the system is fundamentally set up to break the people working in it, what's the point of just adding more people to be broken? The problem isn't recruitment. The real question is, how on earth do you get anyone to stay?